close on the 9th level. So this is actually an evolutionary process of 16 billion years that is now coming to a close, or manifesting in its full regalia, if you want to use the language of the ancient Maya. And now each of these levels, as I said, is developed by a wave of 13, same as the daily 13. The number 13 is crucial. The process of from seed to mature fruit is crucial in understanding all of these waves and the cosmic evolution scheme. The thing is, however, that each of these waves have a different frequency, and these energies, each of these 13 energies will last for a specific duration. So if you look at the bottom level there and go to the right, you can see that at the lowest level of the universe, or the universal evolution, each of these 13 time periods lasted 1.125 billion years, which is a very, very long time. And what this tells us is that evolution was very slow as the universe started. Now, then we've climbed to higher and higher levels. And so at the current time, when we're at the 9th levels, each of these time periods are as short as 18 regular days. And many people, of course, are experiencing this kind of speed up of time. So if you look at how these different time periods, how they relate to one another in the same scale, because the pyramid is not the correct scale of the different waves. It wouldn't be possible to build a pyramid that reflects that accurately. But then you can see here, that at the bottom level there, you come into the regional underworld, which is an Aztec word meaning basically wave, or we're using here synonymously with wave. And that wave is about 100,000 years. And so it goes back to the time when human beings properly started to speak, about 100,000 years ago. And then these different energies have served to evolve the human beings. And it is basically then towards the end here, this is the time of the Ice Age people, the cave painters, and so forth. And in those days, things seem to change very, very slowly. You can have a mammoth fur your whole life, and nobody would say you were not in fashion. Things moved very slowly. Now, in the next level, you come to what's called the national underworld, which goes by the name of the long count mostly in the Mayan tradition. There you can see it's also the wave is 13 different energies, but the energies are shifting with a 20 times higher frequency. So each of these time periods are as short as 400 years. Now that was reflected in the rate of change of human life. So, if you study, for instance, how the fashions would change among the nobility in France in the medieval times, you will find that it would change maybe every 10 years or so. Life was no longer static. as it was essentially among the Ice Age people. And then you come up to the next level, a new wave on top of that, which is so condensed that it's that you can hardly distinguish between the days and the nights, the light and the dark periods. And that's basically starting 1755, coinciding with the Industrial Revolution. And this brings a world where people all the time want things brand new. Towards the end of this, the fashions will change, or the fashion houses will come out with maybe 4 different collections per year. So there's tremendous speed up in the rate of change. And then, of course, we have 2 more levels. The galactic underworld that started in 1999, and that's just a time when wise people completely give up on keeping up with the fashion. But it's still something that people experience clearly. Time is accelerating. Time is speeding up. And it is only the Mayan calendar system. It's the only one that explains how this happened and why it happens. And of course, you could never explain this by an astronomical calendar system, because the planets and the Earth and so forth, they haven't changed their speed. They go with the same speed as they ever did. It is the rate of change, the creation that has speeded up as we climb to higher levels. And now, if you look at the pyramid as a model for all of creation, you can say that it's 9 levels, as I said before. And here you can see that the 4 lower levels, they are basically about biological evolution. Those waves are ultimately leading to the creation of the modern human being, the Homo sapiens that comes out of the 13th energy of the 4th level. And then comes 4 new levels, which are all about the mental and cultural evolution of humankind. And then there is, on top of this, is the 9th level, which is the one that we're in now. And this is the one with the highest frequency, and I believe it has a little bit of a different perspective than the previous waves. It may not be as much about continuing the evolution, technically speaking, and so forth, of the human beings. It seems much more to be a wave that is coming from the perspective of the divine in how to eventually harmonize the result of the 8 lower levels. If you look at the column there to the right, you're seeing something else that is very important. This is the kind of polarities of consciousness that define the human beings at each of these different levels. And this is important. You may wonder, why are we not the same kind of people as the Ice Age people, or the medieval people, or so forth? The reason is that the polarity of our mind has changed. And each of these levels is associated with a specific polarity of mind. And these polarities determine how we perceive reality. And then we who are completely unaware of this in general, we go out to create an external reality that is consistent with how we perceive it, with a kind of filters that are dominating our minds. So in the Mayan calendar system, it's not like there is such a thing as human nature or an eternal human being. No, The human beings are created by these different waves. And as we climb the pyramid, we become different. We're not the same. And it's outside of our control, because these polarities of consciousness, they are actually actually generated by the central axis of the universe, the cosmic tree of life. And through our resonance with this particular structure, we tend to see the world differently and create different worlds outside. So, in a sense, this is a tremendous reason for hope. Because, if we were just to hope that humankind would suddenly wake up and change, that may be a little bit optimistic. But if we realize that whatever ways we've had to look upon the world is really a product of our consciousness and our resonance with the universe, then there is actually a kind of hope. And as you can see here, the polarities they sort of going up, they're sort of corkscrewing upwards. That's kind of why we're all screwed up. But the regional way, which is the 100,000 years of Ice Age people and very basic human cultural evolution, you can see that it's also a person there who has no filters. People at those times lived in a unity with nature, but at a very low material level, so to speak. And then comes the national wave, and you can see there's a filter laid upon the right brain half of that lady. And that is what created the whole patriarchal civilizations that has been dominating the planet for 5,000 years, essentially. On top of that comes somebody who is completely filtered out, blindfolded, as it says in one of the ancient Mayan books, the books of Chilam Balam. And blindfolded meaning that there is no sensitivity to the spiritual energies out there. This is what started the Industrial Revolution in the mid-1700s. This shift in polarity brought people to think there is no spirit to worship. All we can do is sort of look upon the earth as dead matter and exploit it. This actually came from a shift in polarity that was not a human invention. The human inventions that followed were the result of this shift in the mind, in this new filter of the mind. Then you can see at the galactic underworld, there is the light is instead coming on the right brain half. And that's the reason that we've seen a sort of a change, a shift towards the feminine, more holistic thinking and so forth in recent times. It may not affect everyone, because after all, probably everyone in this room were born into that planetary wave, born into this filter that thought made us think there is no spiritual forces out there. And most of us probably had to, with time, as the new waves were approaching, we have discovered that maybe there are other qualities than just the physical reality that's there. But nonetheless, we were born into it, pretty much everyone in this room. And then, as you see, the top level is again a person without a filter. And meaning that this is unity consciousness on a new higher level. And that is what the 9th level is primarily about. But it's been developing so quickly and with such a high frequency that, people have been tumbling around basically, and it's not easy always to keep the balance in this high rate of change. And now, to me, the critical thing about the Mayan calendar, and the reason that I think it's worthy of studying, is that you can correlate these different shift points in the calendar with actual events that have taken place in the universe. I mean, that's really a prerequisite for saying that this is a prophetic calendar. If you cannot show that in the past it has described all kinds of changes in the universe, then you really have no basis for saying that this is a prophetic calendar that you can use to understand the process of evolution that we're in ourselves. And you might have seen that on a previous slide. I said that the shifts between these energies of the Mayan calendar are quantum phenomena. And what that means is that when there are significant shifts, such as when a new wave is activated, there is also a significant quantum shift taking place. And quantum shift, what it means is that something fundamentally new, some novelty that never existed before, comes into existence. The most dramatic example is the bottom level here, the fact that the universe, the Big Bang, the beginning of time, is sort of a quantum shift basically from nothing to something. And then you can see there are quantum shifts, like, another wave starts the appearance of the first animals. Another wave, the sixth wave, usually called the long count, initiates the emergence of the first higher civilizations, which is like a quantum shift that has for so long baffled historians. Why suddenly 5,000 years ago in certain places, like in the Sumer, in Egypt, in the Indus Valley, suddenly popped up these civilizations that could do things that we probably cannot do ourselves today, like building pyramids, and started to use writing, starting to use metals and all of these kind of things. A tremendous quantum shift happened about when the sixth wave was activated and brought these first higher civilizations into existence. And then, you might say, other point, I already mentioned the Industrial Revolution in the beginning of the seventh wave. The most evident thing that happened when the ninth wave started was, this huge earthquake in Japan, the nuclear crisis. You may not remember exactly that particular initiating point in time, but it was, each level brings a frequency increase. Frequency increase meaning that more things happen within a certain given period of time. But at that time, it was not only the nuclear crisis in Japan, the earthquake, the new war in Libya, the beginning of these economic shakes, and against the backdrop of maybe 13 Arabic revolutions or something like that. The magazine Newsweek simply wrote "Apocalypse Now." It was just more things happening than people could grasp. So this is what initiated this wave out of the much more slow galactic underworld that had preceded it. Now, as I said, each of these waves are developed by 13 energies, a sequence of different energies. And we could look at any of these 9 waves in order to find the reality basis of the Mayan calendar. But I usually prefer to use the so-called long count, which is the 6th wave of the pyramid, 6th level of the pyramid, because that covers the human history as we know it, and so it's something where we have a good handle and can track things and how these different shifts have emerged. And if you look there, you can see to the left, you see the 13 heavens, the 13 energies, and then you see the beginning and end time of all of these. On this level, on the 6th level, each of these time periods is 394 years long. But if you wanted exact timing, it is 144,000 days, which is a number you may recognize also from the Bible, 144,000. And then to the right, in the ancient Mesoamerican cultures, each of these 13 energies was associated with a deity, a god or a goddess. And unfortunately, we do not know the Mayan names of them. But there are many, many similarities between the Aztecs and the Maya system, and we do know the Aztec names for these different deities. And this was basically the situation that I was faced with when I started to do independent research about the Mayan calendar about 18 years ago. And, with my scientific background, I wanted to know, is this some kind of a superstition, some kind of a hoax, or is there truly some kind of reality background to the Mayan calendar? And then I reasoned, well, if there's a reality background, then whenever there would be an energy shift in the heavens, we would see some kind of effect among the human beings and their lives when it came to how these energies would be acting out or playing out. And, depending on what country you come from, I could probably talk a lot about these different shift points. But I think one shift point that most people in one way or another can relate to is, for instance, the shift point between the god of rain and the god of light. The 8th and the 9th heavens in this particular way. Because, from a European perspective, this is what gave rise to the Roman Empire. But more importantly and more lastingly, you might say, this is the shift point that gave rise to the Christian religion. And it's, some people would say, no, Jesus was born in the year 0 or something like that. Well, there's a lot of legends out there, and lots of things could have happened. But if we want to be on firm historical ground, the first mentions of this new group of religious people is actually from around the year 40. The year 40 is when Paul goes out on his first missionary journey. And in the 40s, the Roman chroniclers were starting to complain and write about the disturbances caused by these Christians that were coming to the city of Rome. And the really significant thing in the Christian religion is probably the so-called apostolic meeting in Jerusalem in the year 49. Because what happened there was that the apostles that had gathered together with Paul decided that anyone, not only Jews, but anyone can be part of the Christian religion. And it was a decisive thing, and rather than saying the other way around, it would have been stayed as some kind of a small Jewish sect that we might never have heard about again. But they said this is to open to everyone. And so when this energy comes in, you might say the Quetzalcoatl energy, it then in this way gives rise to what later has become the largest religion of our planet, the Christian religion that today has something like 2 billion something, nobody can say an exact, but it's a big religion. And now what I'm offering here is sort of an alternative way of looking at history, that saying that the timing of things are determined not by sort of a linear Gregorian calendar. The timing of things is determined by shifting energies according to the Mayan calendar system. And basically saying that, that there might have been somebody like Jesus a couple of thousand years earlier, but because the energy was not there, the Quetzalcoatl energy was not influencing people, there was not the receptivity in the minds of people. The consciousness shift had not taken place that made them accept this new message that he came with. Now, you might then look at this whole God of Light energy, the Quetzalcoatl energy, as a time of expansion of this new religion, where it comes to embrace the whole Mediterranean region, the Roman Empire, and so forth. But then, as you may see, 434, there is a new Baktun, a new energy, the 10th of the heavens in the Mayan calendar system that is activated. And this is the Baktun of the Lord of Darkness, not the Lord of Light. This is Tezcatlipoca in the Aztec tradition. And what happens is not only that the Huns are coming in from the east and basically setting an end to the Roman Empire, starting what we in the European tradition usually think of as the Dark Ages. Civilization essentially moved to the Arabs and so forth. But the collapse of the Roman Empire, the beginning of the Dark Ages, it also coincided with a shift in the nature of the Christian religion. So, for instance, during the first energy of the Lord of Light, you don't find any crucifixes in any catacombs anywhere in Rome or elsewhere. The shift to the oldest representation of the suffering Christ of the cross is from the church Santa Sabina in Rome. It's about 430. So it comes with the Lord of Darkness. And the whole idea of an original sin comes with the Lord of Darkness. That idea it's actually introduced by the most influential of the church fathers, who was Augustine, who basically promoted the idea that human beings are sinful or wrong to begin with. And all you can do to sort of get out of that state is to join the church. And that is kind of a dark, it's a somewhat crazy idea, really. Why would a God create people that are wrong to begin with? But that's really what's inherent in this idea of original sin. But the reason I'm saying this is just to let you see that the energies, and we're talking about something that has influenced the entire planet, the nature of the Christian religion and its emergence and its shifting into a more church-based hierarchy, is something that comes out of these shifting energies that the Mayan calendar describes. And, depending on your the particular country you come from, we can, many different things could be brought up. When you come to in this way, when you come to the 13th energy, you are coming to the beginning of the new mindset, the scientific revolution in Europe, and that sort of in a sense, the beginning of the 1600s is the modern world of capitalism, science, and Protestantism really coming into existence. So, something else, this tells us something else, of course. And if you agree that maybe these energies is all behind the evolution of our civilization, then the Mayan calendar is not something that is peculiar to the Mesoamericans or the Mayan people. It is then in fact a global calendar. And anyone who is in resonance with these energies will somehow respond to these energies and act them out. In fact, it's not only a global calendar, it's a cosmic calendar. And that's, coming back to what I said earlier, this is not a calendar based on the small little astronomical cycles in our own solar system. These are energies that pervade the whole cosmos and goes probably to influence people everywhere, or human-like species or whatever is out there on other galaxies and planets and so forth. Because, as I said, it is not based on our local astronomical cycles. It is cosmic energies that are influencing our evolution. So then, I happen to talk about religions, and I won't go into detail on this, but all the basic religions of the Earth is really, of the planet, is really coming out of this wave movement, step by step. Mostly they are initiated by a pulse of light, a peak in the energies, which are the white sources here. The only difference, the only major religion is Islam, but you may think of how the symbols of Islam is actually the evening star and the moon crescent, which are bringing light into the darkness. And that's more like the nature of Islam in this context. The other religions of our planet have been sort of inspired by incoming new energies of light in this wave movement. So now, we talked about a little bit of how these waves shaped, especially European history, I should say, in the latter part of it. But if this is a process going from seed to mature fruit, and the fruit in this case is the modern world of capitalism and Protestantism and science, the question will be, what then was the seed that started this wave and led to this particular fruit? And to answer that question, we will simply have to go to the first time period, the first Baktun in this cycle, and ask what happened in human history between the years 3115 BC and 2721 BC. And then we come to this point in time that I already mentioned, like a quantum shift when the higher civilizations suddenly emerged from another kind of being that had existed before. And the signs that we see of these new civilizations, is not only that at this time the seed here is writing, another seed is the formation of nations, maybe initially in Egypt, it seems like, and suddenly building these huge pyramids that still blow our mind, and the beginning of the use, leaving the Stone Age, starting to use metals. All of these things happened at the time when this wave was seeded, the initiating energy of the long count. So, and mostly we would say these are advances, because we're still using them. I mean, we're still using writing, still living, at least for some time more, in organized nations, using metals here in this room, not exactly sitting in a pyramid, but we certainly have continued to build big buildings of different kinds. So in that sense, these are actually advances on the path of society. On the other hand, you can also say that this particular time period brought things, there were negative sides to the coin. And for instance, previously it seems that the human societies had been fairly egalitarian. And you may recall that the filter was absent in the lower level before this wave was activated. But here suddenly comes a society stratified according to different levels, but that was completely kept apart. Rulers and slaves, basically. And what also, so we have a separation taking place within the societies. But what also happened was that there was the beginning of organized intentional warfare, where some priest, king, or ruler would say that, decide to attack and conquer some country maybe thousands of miles away. Organized intentional warfare, not just a fist fight over a hunting ground, but something quite different, which reflects a separation coming in between different peoples. That, we're still essentially living with this separation. It did not exist before. And it's also how, the desire seems to have come up to more or less conquer nature, keep it out, and transform it according to the human needs, and start all this. So there was a separation coming in between humans and nature when this wave was activated in the Mayan calendar system. And so, we may then ask the question, why did this happen? The ancient Maya describe the beginning of this particular wave. And again, it is this amazing situation that we actually have some information about it. And to find this information, we'll have to go to the pyramid of the inscriptions in Palenque and go to the top of the house to look at the walls where the creation story of the ancient Maya was written. And there it describes how did they look upon the initiation of the long count that they were using as a calendar for all their pyramids and so forth. Why did this start? Well, it says there that something they called the first father, it probably what we today would call the Great Spirit or God or something like that. He erected the world tree, or the tree of life is a more common name for it. He erected the world tree so that the light could enter. That's what happened. And you may notice here that they don't give answers in terms of what happens like concretely down on earth. They are talking about the energetic shifts, the polarity shifts of consciousness. And this is, it's kind of the same situation you're faced with today when you are to talk about what will happen in a couple of months, because you can only talk about it really in terms of the shift in consciousness. You cannot really in detail say what is going to happen. But they did say this. They said the first father erected the world tree. Okay? And so, what is the world tree? And here we come to an almost enigmatic situation, because all the ancient peoples of our planet had put a significant role on the tree of life. Whereas modern people think it's a myth. They think it's a symbol, but it's not real. That's what modern people usually think about the tree of life. Which is kind of strange, considering that it's something that has, it's from the Maori to the Maya, from my own ancestors, Yggdrasil, the huge ash, the world tree, to the tree of faith of the San people in the south. People everywhere worship the tree of life. The reason people no longer do it, I can tell you that without expanding too much, but basically Christianity took it over, made it into the Christian cross, and associated it with that whole story. And so then people do not know, because they think the cross is the cross of Golgotha. In reality, the cross as a symbol is just another representation of the tree of life. So, I talked about these different forms of separation that were initiated 5,000 years ago. And those that have most here probably had read it in the biblical form, in the book of Genesis, the tree of life, and the whole story, how they are separated from God, how they are expulsed from this unity consciousness in the Garden of Eden. And what you may notice is the tree of life played a significant role in this drama. And what you also may notice is that on these medieval paintings, like this one from Lucas Cranach, Adam and Eve, the man and the woman, are separated by the tree of life. It's almost universally is presented on two different levels. So the tree creates a polarity of the genders, which is something you also find here from the Mayan tree representations. They actually talk about the tree of life as male-female duality trees. That I think is from Codex Madrid, and that is it's a Mixtec codex. It's not truly Mayan, it's from Oaxaca instead. But you can see the left part of the tree is a female part, and the right part of the tree is the male part. So you have a coming back to the same idea. The ancient peoples had a sense of the tree of life, how it creates separations and polarities of the mind. And the Maya, and I think most Native American peoples, are actually helping us with understanding the tree of life a little bit more. Because from this picture from Palenque also, you can see that the tree of life in the center is associated with the energies of the four directions. And so it's like the ceremonies that you've been having here, emphasizing that each direction has an energy of its own. And they symbolized it with colors, with glyphs, deities, like this. And you might say this is a part of a worldview that is coming back to us through ceremonies like this. But it's not still part of what you're taught in school. You're not, which is a little bit funny, because when it comes to these polarities of energies between the four directions, there is one particular polarity that almost was has been like a daily thing to talk about, which is the polarity between East and West. You know, Eastern civilization is not Western civilization, or at least it didn't used to be. When Rudyard Kipling, who was this Englishman who wrote the Jungle Book, lived in India about 100 years ago, he would say, East is East and West is West, and never shall the two meet. Well, that might have been true then. Today, you know, there are more yoga centers in New York than in Bombay. If you go to Bombay, they're just after your money, basically. And so things are coming back together, and maybe we'll have time to explain that. But the point is that, you know, most people here, for instance, were properly born into the Cold War, where the whole planet was divided into a Western hemisphere, the Western bloc, that favored supposedly individualism and capitalism, and an Eastern bloc that favored collectivism and socialism. And you may then wonder, is it an accident that the planet was divided essentially through the city of Berlin into mentalities like that? Or is it actually true, this kind of a worldview, that there is a tree of life that are organizing the energies of the planet in such a way that a separation was made? Well, if you look upon me as a reflection of the earth, then and you look upon it like this, that, you know, my eyes are the Hawaiian Islands, Pacific side is the front side. Well, then you will find that my left brain half corresponds to the Western Hemisphere. It's in resonance with the Western Hemisphere. Now, my left brain half, that's the brain half that is analytical, rational, mathematical. That's what you're using when you're writing, and so forth. And your right brain half is the holistic, intuitive, more emotional brain half, the aesthetic brain half. To make it short, when the left brain half sees the trees, the right brain half sees the forest. Now, trees and forest, is that different from individualism and collectivism? No, it's exactly the same thing, except that the way the world was divided through the Cold War was on a more global collective scale. And then this is reflected in me through my resonance with the earth. Basically, the earth is a global brain, and we all created in the image of the earth. And each one of us is like a nerve cell manifesting one aspect of this particular global brain. As above, so below. So it seems that, of course, you know, you might have been part of Mayan ceremonies or other ceremonies as well, where you look upon yourself as a tree of life, where, you know, there are 6 directions emanating from your heart, the center of your being. There is the front, there is the back, the left and the right, and there is the up and below. And this, you know, is just a reproduction of the same directional energies that exist already on the level of the planet. And so separates the functionalities, because depending on where people live on the planet, they tend to be more in resonance with that what is typical of that part of the global brain. So if you live in Japan, you will be more in line with the Eastern energies and think in those terms, and it's actually been psychologically proven that this is the case. And whereas if you're living in Arizona in the West, you might be more into a cowboy mentality, and the Japanese, you might be more into a geisha mentality, so to speak. In other words, depending on where you live, your resonance with the earth would shape you, and especially your culture, in different ways. Now, the world tree was erected, and if you recall from an earlier slide, 5,000 years ago, a polarity of consciousness was introduced.